Now 11 o'clock. Good morning, everyone. Good Saturday morning. Welcome to a little brief 30-minute presentation on the woodwind instruments. And the topics that I'd like to cover is, what do we do when we try to make sounds, and hopefully musical sounds, on woodwind instruments? What are the woodwinds? Well, this one is the flute. Now, I already hear you saying, but, it's made of metal. Yes, it does. It is made of metal, but this is the baby brother, the piccolo, and that's made of wood. Most of the instruments that we originally started that were the woodwind instruments either had a wooden reed, and this is a piece of cane. It's like bamboo. If your parents have wicker furniture at home, that's pretty much what it is. It's specifically cane grown in the south of France that's aged, and then we shape it. We'll talk a little bit about that. Then we have these instruments, the clarinet family, and there are a lot of them, from the very small E flat all the way to the ginormous double B flat contrabass. We have the saxophone family. Now, none of them have ever been made of wood, at least not that I know of. We've got wooden mouthpieces, wooden necks, but it's just easier to make these out of brass. Saxophone, created by Adolphe Sax, thus the name, but they do use a mouthpiece with a reed. And the reeds are generally made of cane, but sometimes other materials as well. And oboes and bassoons, and this is a bassoon. The things that they all have in common, I wonder what you might think. What do they have in common? Well, they're tubes. They're tubes of some specific length that make sound. Anything that has ever made a sound on this planet has operated in the same way. And I'm going to use a term called the Overtone Series. Overtone Series. They're the natural sounds that are produced when anything is resonated. And what do I mean by resonated? Well, it could be simply making a sound. That's a sound. What is sound? Well, that's a good question. Air is the medium that we use for sound to travel. Yeah? Air is the medium. In this bottle, this olive oil bottle, there's air. Now, there's olive oil, but there's air. And if I figure out the resonance that's most maximized, right? It's kind of a flat C. But how do I get that note to be produced? Well, the volume or length of the tube has a specific tone or set of tones that comes out. If I could do another one of these presentations, I might talk about overtones and tuning of chords, both in equal temperament and in pure temperament. But that's maybe another date. For this pitch, I'm not working hard at all, and it naturally happens. Let me pose a question to you guys. Have you ever been in a bathroom, a large bathroom, maybe a school bathroom or a gymnasium bathroom, where you tried to sing a pitch and you slide that pitch up and down, and there's going to be one or maybe two where the sound just gets huge? That is the frequency match for that room. That's the most resonant frequency or sound that we're going for. Well, believe it or not, that's what we try to do with our woodwind instruments. Yeah? Okay. Most of us who played instruments, at least the wind instruments, started on recorder. Do you remember recorder? Yeah? That little thing that made your mom and dad crazy? Well, at NYU, where I teach, we start off our woodwind practicum on recorder to get used to a couple of things. Now, on the flute, as you can see, this is a French flute. First finger goes here, then there's a hole and a hole, then hole, hole, hole. And we talk about fingering for B, A, G, F, E, D. Now I'm going to do that a little close to the mic. You hear that certain sounds come out? That's like changing the size of the bathroom, making it bigger as I go down. I'm finding those natural frequencies. Here's what those notes really sound like. Now, how am I getting the sound? How am I getting the sound? I think you probably already know. Much like our friend, the bottle of olive oil, we take our airstream from our mouth and we blow across this hole till we get to the far side and we split the airstream. Now, what if I turn this into my bottle? If I close the hole, well, that's kind of a low B natural. It's actually a little longer than our bottle. Can you hear that? Can you hear that overtone? That's actually not a, well, I'll come back to that. Let me try doing it now with this open. What interval is that I'm getting? Can anybody type in a comment? I'll wait for you guys. Maybe, maybe not. As you're thinking about it, I'll do it again. Right? Now that's the open tube. I'm going to put my hand over the end. Whoa, different pitch. What interval is that? Well, let's go back to the open tube and see if we can compare and contrast. That's an octave, right? So that's an octave. An open tube is an octave blowing instrument. It's going to overblow octaves. In fact, if you take a violin string, play the complete open string, and then touch it in the middle, you're going to get the octave above. You're going to divide that string in half. Well, literally, that's what I've done here. Now, if I put it on the flute, and let me get myself lined up. I'm going through octaves, not by an octave key, no saxophone, no clarinet. Bassoon even has kind of an octave key. Oboe has an octave key. No, it's more like trumpet, French horn, trombone, euphonium, tuba. You have to actually make the pitch change. So the flute overblows octaves. Now, I'm going to play low D, B, A, G, F, E, D. I'm not going to lift anything. I'm not going to change anything. Could you hear all those pitches? That, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, doggies and kittens, and squishy the fishy, that is the Overtone series. Those are the things that I have my students work on, and I hope those who are playing flute out there are finding those overtones as well. Now, why do I have the piccolo? Well, it's literally half the size of the flute. It's fingered exactly the same. It's fingered exactly the same. It has a little embouchure hole. It has no holes, it just has pads, and it has no foot joints. So the lowest note is low D. So I'm playing an octave above the flute, my embouchure has to change, yeah? But still, I'm blowing across the far side of the flute. Does that make sense to you? So flutophones, instruments that we blow against, this could be considered the olive oil flutophone. Produces a nice G for us, and you are blowing air across the far side of an aperture to excite the inside of the instrument. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. Do we have any questions? Any questions at all? No? All right. I'd like to demonstrate the proposition that we're setting the air that already exists inside an instrument. This is a saxophone, alto saxophone mouthpiece and neck. I've turned the mouthpiece upside down so that I have this end up, right? So this is what the mouthpiece and the neck sound like. Anybody have perfect pitch? That would be a G sharp, right? That would be a G sharp. And that's the pitch that I look for when I have my students play. We also do it just on the mouthpiece. But I'd like for you to see what happens if I start the air column in this short instrument into motion and then set this little piece of tissue paper. It's nothing more than very expensive toilet tissue, right? We all know about toilet tissue being in short supply. Well, this is about maybe 5 cents worth, maybe, I don't know. But we're going to put it right on top and let's see what happens. No matter how hard I blow, I couldn't get it to blow off. There has to be just enough air to try to get enough air from me. It has to match the need of the tube. That's called impedance. It's also called resonance. That's another big word that we can save maybe for another discussion. Shall I do that again? Shall I do that again? Here we go. Kind of cool, huh? So when we get an instrument to vibrate, when we get the air column in the instrument to vibrate, we get a resonant tone. Okay. We saw an instrument that was blowing overtones of an octave. What's this instrument? This one's called the clarinet. The clarinet has a bigger brother. This is the A clarinet on this side. This is the B flat clarinet. A little bit more about that. It has a thumb hole. It has a register key right next to it, and then hole, 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 hole. How do you think the fingering goes on this instrument? If you say B, A, G, F, E, D, you're absolutely right. Absolutely. But that's only in the top, and I'm going to say octave, because the clarinet doesn't play octaves. All right? I'm going to finger this note, B, A, G, but I'm going to play it in the low register. Anybody have an idea? Anybody got perfect pitch? Okay, so it's a G concert, right? No, maybe not. It's a B flat concert, so it's a low C. I'm I'm keeping the same three fingers and I'm just pressing the register key. What is that interval? Does that sound familiar? Why, it's the same 12th. By putting my hand on that end of the tube, it closed the tube and made it a closed acoustic instrument. Now that's just like a pipe organ tube. So pipe organs and clarinets and closed instruments like our bottle overblow 12ths. So the clarinet is one of the only instruments that has notes in between the registers. Those notes are the throat tones. So we have all of those notes, G, G sharp, A sharp, before we get back to the regular fingering notes. So for the clarinet, we have the low register, that's called the shallow. Shallow. It looks like Chaleameau, shallow. We have the throat tones right here. We have the clarion, and then we have altissimo. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So how do they make their sound? Well, we have a mouthpiece and a reed. Mouthpiece and a reed, and the reed is held on by some kind of a clamp, a ligature, something that'll tie. And that F sharp concert is what we want to get with the short clarinet, mouthpiece and barrel. Yeah? F sharp concert, or a G sharp on the clarinet. It uses an embouchure, which is a little different from the flute. With the flute, we start with M, and push air between our lips to create a focused airstream so it cuts across the far side. We have to build in resistance. Build in resistance. What's resistance? It's you trying to get out the door and somebody's holding you back, pushing against you. With the clarinet, with the saxophone, with the bassoon and the oboe, our reed gives us resistance. With the flute, our lips have to do it. They change the shape of the hole and the shape of the airstream that comes out. Smaller, faster airstream, higher pitch. Slower, bigger, rounder airstream, lower pitch. With this, we don't really change that. What changes the octave? It's the length of the tube and the venting of the register key. But now, is it possible to change the clarinet into an open hole tube? What would we need to do? Well, funny you should ask. A very dear friend of mine from college, who's no longer with us, made me a device. It's called a head joint for a clarinet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this head joint on and turn the clarinet into a flute or a clarinet. You decide. What's it going to sound like? What do you think? What do you think it's going to sound like? Is it going to sound like a flute? Is it going to sound like a clarinet? Or is it going to be some weird alien thing? Well, let's find out. What do you think? It changes into a flute. Isn't that crazy? So the idea that the clarinet and its polycylindrical bore, it's got basically a cylindrical bore with a closed mouthpiece at the end. The mouthpiece that we have turns this into a closed tube. When you change that into a flute head joint, it turns it into an open tube. It turns it into a flute. Is there any other way to make sounds other than blowing or reeds? Well, funny you should ask. How do our brass brothers and sisters make sounds? They have a mouthpiece. We can turn the clarinet into just about anything. But here should be a lesson for you. Number one thing that you should take away: instruments need a vibration source. That's number one, to turn the air column inside of them into from a static non-motioned column into a vibrating column. Now the vibration is not going through it, it's standing still. It's doing just like what we saw this little piece of tissue paper doing. It was doing that, just vibrating. And by making that resonance, the sound waves travel out of the instrument completely. So the brass instruments, all the sound comes out of the bell. For the woodwind instruments, the sound comes out through the holes and through the body. Okay, so why do we have, well, first of all, I said the bottom note, B-A-G, is really now E-D-C. For those of us with perfect pitch, we know that's not a C. That's a B flat. So that pitch is called a B flat concert. Because I'm fingering C and a B flat comes out, I am transposing, when I read what I have to play, up a whole step. Why do we have transpositions? Hold on to that thought. Here's my other bigger clarinet. There's the same note. That's still a C, but what's coming out is an A. Well, that means this clarinet is in A, and this clarinet is in B flat. Why do we have transposing instruments? Well, the lengths of the tubes are different. We keep the fingerings the same for the ease of the players in an instrument family. All instruments in a family are fingered the same way. That's the answer. The people who write and compose for the instruments have to then compensate, move up as needed. For the B-flat clarinet, it's a whole step up. So if they want a sound to C, they have to write up to D. For the A clarinet, if they want a sound to C, they have to write up to what? E flat. So those things will sound down where they appropriately are. Okay? So that's the clarinet family. They overblow twelfths, they cover holes, they have a single reed, and the mouthpiece is a single reed mouthpiece. This is the saxophone. It's a tube as well. Now, much like what we showed with the clarinet, we can make sounds by buzzing into the mouthpiece. You can take a bassoon reed, you can make a sound. We need a vibration source, and it just so happens that the vibration source that is most appropriate for this is a reed and a mouthpiece, right? If I take that same piece of tissue paper and put it in the bell as I'm playing the lowest note, which is B flat, it will do the same thing. It will stay stationary in the bell. Right now, I don't have my neck strap, so I'm sort of holding it, but this is one of the instruments that's a little bit on the heavy side. The saxophone family tends to be heavy, so we use a neck strap to hold the instrument in place. Yeah? Now, the fingering strategy, what was the fingering strategy, excuse me, for recorder? B-A-G, F-E-D. Left hand is on top, right hand on the bottom. Bag fed. Well, guess what? On saxophone, B-A-G, F-E-D. By pressing the octave key, I'm getting octaves. On the clarinet, it's a 12th key. Remember that? Not an octave. Cool? I can still play. Overtone series. I have my saxophone players do that as we go through the entire range. So of the instruments that we've seen so far, the flute family, the clarinet family, all of them, the saxophone family, all of them, what clef do they read? By the way, what is a clef? Une clé in French is a key, right? It unlocks something. Well, the clef unlocks the 5 lines of the music staff, and it tells us those notes in that staff are right above middle C. So they're the upper sounds. All instruments in a family read the same key. Okay, we've come to the lowest of the woodwinds, and it'll be the representative for the double reeds. Yeah? Here's the vibration source. It is a bassoon reed that is made by me. It's a single piece of cane. There's the opening. And it makes a sound. I've been soaking it in water. That's my film canister with a little bit of water. Believe it or not, that is the kind of sound I want. Yeah? So that sound is low sounds, middle sounds, and high sounds, because this instrument is capable of playing low sounds, middle sounds, and high sounds. That note was the F at the top of the treble clef. F. Not the grade that you guys are getting right now, but that was the note that I played. That's the lowest note written for the bassoon. Now, there was a composer who wrote a woodwind quintet, Carl Nielsen, and he asked us to play a low A. Well, I had to stick a piece of paper into the bell to extend the length of the tube. Made it about 12 inches longer, and that's now the low A. I have an extension that works better, but isn't that cool? Kind of sounds like a Barry sax, doesn't it? That's the bassoon. It's got 3 holes, 2 holes, and the bore doubles back on itself. If I pull that off, you can see that the tube itself doubles back. I'm going to take the cap off, and that looks like something in your mom and dad's bathroom, right? The plumbing. The tube is one singular tube. It's 9 feet in length. Has a bassoon reed, and this is what it sounds like on just the bocal, or the tube, and the reed. Now the reed is supposed to play with the tube a C. The oboe also the reed plays a C. I'm going to ask you guys a question. We've got 1 minute left. Why does the oboe tune us in orchestra? And I bet you don't know. Probably Mr. Heisey says so, but in all orchestras around the world, they do. I guess we have no oboists in the audience. So oboists build their reeds to play a split C, and it goes all the way in. And if they're in control of that reed, they will have the correct pitch, no matter what. So we always go with the oboe pitch because their reeds are in tune. That brings us to the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to look me up on Facebook, my name is Michael, Michael. My last name is Breaux, Breaux. I'm professor of music education at New York University, and I wish you guys all the best, all the health and happiness, and that we have the ability to go outside and play once again. But most importantly, we have the ability to play with each other and make great music and rejoice in the fact that we're all here vibrating our tubes. So if the bassoon is 9 feet, the contra is twice that. How much is 2 times 9? And if my nephew was here, he'd probably say 630. Yeah, 18 feet long, 18-foot tube. Pretty much like a tuba, if you unwrap it. A trombone is about 9 feet long. They have the same B-flat pedal point. Doesn't that make sense? It's sort of irrefutable. If you guys would like for me to talk more about acoustics and tuning, I have some demonstrations we could do. If you want to just contact me, I'm happy to do it. Okay? Anything else, or should we call it a day? Mr. Heisey, what would you like for me to do, sir? Again, I'm just going to say that if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. You can look me up on Facebook, and you're very, very welcome. I can't thank you guys enough. It's been a joy to at least virtually meet you. I'd love to see you guys all face and face, but Andrew, thank you, sir. Um, I guess I'll close off. Um, I might play you a tune, but I think I'll just close off and look forward to seeing you again. Okay? Take good care. Be well.